She was a virgin nurse caring for his mother, and the millionaire couldn't control his burning desire. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She knew this job would change everything. She just didn't know how much. Ava Robinson pressed the worn leather of her nursing bag against her chest as the taxi pulled through the iron gates of the Montgomery estate. The morning sun cast long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawns, and she couldn't help but feel like an intruder in this world of polished marble and pristine hedges. Her reflection in the taxi window showed a young woman trying to look more confident than she felt. Dark eyes wide with determination, natural curls pulled back into a professional bun, navy scrubs that she'd ironed twice that morning. "Here we are, miss," the driver announced, his thick Dallas drawl cutting through her thoughts. "That'll be $32.50. Ava handed him the exact change, her fingers trembling slightly. Every dollar mattered now. Fresh out of nursing school with student loans breathing down her neck like summer heat, this private care position was more than just a job. It was her lifeline. The mansion loomed before her, all cream stone and towering columns that seemed to reach toward the cloudless Texas sky. She'd grown up in a small apartment above her grandmother's bakery in Oak Cliff, where the smell of fresh bread mixed with the sounds of traffic and neighborhood kids playing in the street. This place felt like another planet. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend Celeste. "Girl, you sure about this rich people house? Text me every hour so I know you're alive." Ava smiled, despite her nerves. Celeste always knew how to make her laugh, even when anxiety was eating her alive. She tucked the phone away and walked toward the front door, her sensible white sneakers crunching on the gravel driveway. Before she could knock, the door swung open to reveal a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled into an elegant chignon. Her smile was warm but tired, the kind that spoke of sleepless nights and endless worry. "You must be Ava. I'm Helena Montgomery. Thank you for coming." The woman's voice carried the refined accent of old Texas money, but her handshake was firm, genuine. "I was beginning to think we'd never find the right person for Mother. I'm honored to be here, Mrs. Montgomery. I promise I'll take excellent care of her." Helena's eyes searched Ava's face, and for a moment something vulnerable flickered across her features. She's not been herself lately. The doctors say it's the medication, but I think she's just tired. Tired of being sick, tired of strangers coming and going. She needs someone who will see her as a person, not just a patient. Ava nodded, understanding flooding through her. She'd seen it during her clinical rotations, how easy it was for healthcare workers to forget the human being behind the diagnosis. "That's exactly why I chose home care. Everyone deserves to feel dignity in their own space." As they walked through the foyer, Ava tried not to gawk at the crystal chandelier overhead, or the oil paintings that probably cost more than her car. The marble floors reflected their footsteps, creating an echo that seemed to announce her arrival to the entire house. "She's having a good morning today," Helena continued, leading her up a curved staircase with a banister that felt like silk under Ava's palm. "Dr. Holloway adjusted her pain medication yesterday, so she's more alert. She might even want to chat." They paused outside a heavy wooden door, and Helena turned to face her. "Ava, I need you to know that this family has very little privacy anymore. Between the medical equipment, the rotating nurses, the physical therapists, Mother feels like she's living in a hospital. I hired you because your references spoke about how you make patients feel like they're still in control of their own lives. I understand completely. My grandmother always said that home should be a sanctuary, especially when your body is betraying you." Helena's smile was the first genuinely happy expression Ava had seen from her. "I think Mother is going to like you very much." As they entered the room, Ava was struck by how different it felt from the rest of the house. This space was lived in, personal. Family photos covered every surface. A quilt that looked handmade was draped over the reading chair, and the scent of lavender sachets competed with the sterile smell of medical supplies. The woman in the bed was small but fierce-looking, with silver hair fanned across her pillow and eyes that missed nothing. Eleanor Montgomery might have been weakened by illness, but her spirit was clearly intact. "So you're the one who's going to put up with me," Eleanor said, her voice raspy but amused. "I hope you're prepared for a challenge, dear." Ava approached the bed with the kind of calm confidence that had earned her top marks in school. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'm Ava, and honestly, I'm hoping you'll be the one putting up with me. I have a lot to learn, and something tells me you have a lot to teach." Eleanor's laugh was like music, clear and delighted. "Oh, I like her already, Helena. She's got spirit." As Ava began her morning assessment, checking vital signs and reviewing the medication schedule, she felt the familiar satisfaction that came with purposeful work. This was where she belonged, not in the chaos of hospital wards, but in these quiet moments of human connection. She was so focused on Eleanor's chart that she didn't notice the footsteps in the hallway, didn't hear the door open quietly, didn't realize they had an audience until Eleanor's eyes shifted toward the doorway and her expression changed to something softer, more maternal. "David, come meet your new favorite person." Ava looked up from the chart, expecting to see another family member, maybe Helena's husband. Instead, she found herself staring into the darkest brown eyes she'd ever seen. The man in the doorway was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His hair was dark with just a touch of silver at the temples, and when his gaze met hers, something electric shot through her chest. This had to be David Montgomery. She'd heard Helena mention him on the phone during their initial interview, the son who ran the family's real estate empire, the one who was always traveling, always busy, always in control. He stepped into the room with the kind of confidence that came from owning everything you touched, but his voice when he spoke to his grandmother was gentle, loving. "How are you feeling today, Nana?" "Better, now that I have proper company." Eleanor's eyes twinkled as she gestured toward Ava. "This is Ava Robinson. She's going to take much better care of me than those other nurses who treated me like I was already dead." David's attention shifted fully to Ava, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. There was something in the way he looked at her, not dismissive like she'd expected from someone of his status, but curious, assessing. "Ava." He said her name like he was testing how it felt. "Thank you for taking care of her. She's everything to this family." "It's my pleasure, Mr. Montgomery. Your grandmother is remarkable. Please, call me David." He moved closer to the bed, and Ava caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her stomach flutter in ways she definitely shouldn't be feeling about her employer's grandson. "David's the one who insisted we find a private nurse," Eleanor said, reaching out to pat her grandson's hand. "He worries too much." "Someone has to," David replied, but his smile was warm. Then his eyes found Ava's again. "If you need anything at all, my number's on the emergency contact list, day or night." The way he said it, with such intensity, made Ava's pulse quicken. She nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. After David left for work, Ava tried to focus on her duties, but she found herself replaying their brief interaction. The way he'd said her name, the way his eyes had lingered on her face, the way her body had responded to his presence like a compass finding magnetic north. This was dangerous territory. She was here to work, to build her career, to prove herself. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for a man so far out of her league they weren't even playing the same sport. But as she helped Eleanor with her lunch, listening to stories about David's childhood, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully ordered world was about to become much more complicated. And that evening, as she was packing up her things to leave, she heard his car in the driveway and felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with professional dedication. She was in trouble, the kind of trouble that could change everything. What do you think happens when two worlds collide? Can love really bloom where duty calls? The problem with dangerous thoughts is that they never stay where you put them. Ava's alarm buzzed at 6:30 a.m., pulling her from dreams that had no business occupying a professional woman's mind. She'd spent the night tossing in her small bed, replaying the moment David Montgomery had said her name, the way his dark eyes had seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed composure. "Get it together, girl," she whispered to her reflection as she brushed her teeth in the cramped bathroom of her Oak Cliff apartment. The woman staring back at her looked tired, distracted, everything she couldn't afford to be on her second day. Her phone rang as she was pinning her curls into a neat bun. Celeste's name flashed across the screen. "Morning, Nurse Robinson. How's life in the palace?" Ava balanced the phone between her shoulder and ear while she searched for her stethoscope. "It's different. The family is nice, though. Really nice." "Uh-huh. That's the voice of a woman with secrets. Spill it." "There's nothing to spill, Celeste. I'm there to work." And I'm there to believe you. What's his name?" Ava nearly dropped her nursing bag. "Whose name?" "The man who's got you all twisted up. Don't even try to deny it. I can hear it in your voice. You sound like you did sophomore year when Professor Jameson smiled at you in chemistry class." Heat flooded Ava's cheeks. Celeste knew her too well, had been reading her like an open book since they were roommates at UT Arlington's nursing program. "It's not... There's this guy, but I knew it. Details. Now. Celeste, I'm about to be late for work, and this conversation is not happening. Fine, but this isn't over. Text me later and I want everything, every detail. After hanging up, Ava stood in front of her closet, staring at her scrubs. She'd laid out the navy blue set the night before, but now she found herself reaching for the burgundy ones instead. They brought out the warmth in her brown skin, made her eyes look brighter. She caught herself in the act and jerked her hand back. This was exactly the kind of thinking that led to trouble. She grabbed the navy scrubs and refused to look at herself again until she was walking out the door. The bus ride to Highland Park took 45 minutes, winding through neighborhoods that grew progressively more expensive with each stop. Ava used the time to review Eleanor's care plan, forcing herself to focus on medication schedules and physical therapy goals instead of the memory of David's cologne. When she arrived at the Montgomery estate, Helena met her at the front door with coffee and a grateful smile. "You're an angel for being here so early. Mother had a rough night, couldn't sleep, kept calling for water every 20 minutes. I think she's finally dozed off." Ava accepted the coffee gratefully. It was good coffee, the kind that came from beans she couldn't afford, served in a mug that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Pain or anxiety? Both, I think. She gets restless when David's traveling. He flew to Houston last night for meetings. Won't be back until Thursday. Something that felt suspiciously like disappointment settled in Ava's chest. She ignored it, focusing instead on the relief. 3 days without those intense brown eyes watching her. Every move would give her time to get her head straight. "Let me check on her," Ava said, heading upstairs to Eleanor's room. The elderly woman was indeed sleeping, but fitfully. Her hands moved restlessly over the quilt, and soft whimpers escaped her lips every few minutes. Ava had seen this before, the kind of sleep that provided no rest, where dreams and pain tangled together. She settled into the chair beside Eleanor's bed and began to hum softly, a lullaby her grandmother used to sing when Ava was small and afraid of thunderstorms. Her voice was barely above a whisper, just enough to add a gentle rhythm to the room's silence. Eleanor's movements gradually stilled. Her breathing deepened, and the tension lines around her eyes began to smooth. Within minutes, she was sleeping peacefully. Ava continued humming for another few minutes, then quietly began her morning routine, checking the room's temperature, organizing medications, reviewing the notes from the night nurse. She moved with practiced efficiency, but her mind kept wandering to the empty feeling the house had without David's presence. Around 10 o'clock, Eleanor woke naturally, looking more rested than she had the day before. "Was someone singing?" she asked, blinking in the morning light filtering through gauze curtains. "Just me humming a bit. My grandmother always said music helps the soul rest, even when the body won't." Eleanor smiled, the kind of smile that lit up her entire face. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "She was. She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. Taught me that healing isn't just about medicine. It's about making people feel like they matter." "And what happened to her?" Ava's hands stilled on the blood pressure cuff she was preparing. "Cancer 3 years ago. It's actually why I chose nursing. I wanted to be for other families what the hospice nurses were for us." Eleanor reached out and covered Ava's hand with her own. The gesture was small but profound, and Ava felt tears prick at her eyes. "I'm sorry, dear. Loss like that changes us." "It does, but I think it changed me in good ways, mostly. Made me understand that every moment we have with the people we love is precious." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Ava realized this was why she'd chosen private care over hospital work. These connections, these moments of real human understanding, they were worth more than any salary increase. The morning passed peacefully. Eleanor was more talkative than she'd been the day before, sharing stories about her late husband, her children, the early days of David's business empire. Ava found herself genuinely enjoying the conversation, forgetting to watch the clock. "He started that company when he was barely 25, Eleanor said, as Ava helped her with lunch. "Everyone said he was too young, too ambitious, but David has always been different from other people. More intense, more everything." Ava tried to keep her voice casual. "He seems very dedicated to his family." "Oh, he is. Sometimes too much so. That boy carries the weight of the world on his shoulders, thinks he's responsible for everyone's happiness." Eleanor's eyes grew thoughtful. "He's never learned how to let someone else take care of him." Before Ava could respond, Helena appeared in the doorway looking flustered. "Mother, I hate to interrupt, but there's been some kind of emergency with the Houston project. David's been trying to handle it remotely, but his assistant just called. He might need to extend his trip. Eleanor's face fell. He was supposed to be home Thursday. We were going to watch that old movie he found, the one with Cary Grant. I know, but business always comes first, Eleanor finished, and there was real sadness in her voice. Ava watched the exchange with growing understanding. David wasn't just successful, he was trapped by that success, pulled in a dozen directions by people who needed him. She wondered when he'd last had a moment just for himself, when he'd last been able to simply exist without the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. That afternoon, while Eleanor napped, Ava found herself wandering to the window that overlooked the driveway. She told herself she was just checking the weather, but the truth was more complicated. She missed his presence in the house, the way he'd filled up doorways and made the air feel charged with possibility. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is David Montgomery. How is she today?" Ava stared at the message, her pulse quickening. She typed and deleted half a dozen responses before settling on something professional. "Good day overall. Sleeping better. Some anxiety about your delayed return." His response came immediately. "And how are you?" First week can be overwhelming. The question surprised her. In her experience, employers asked about patience, not about her well-being. She found herself typing honestly, "Learning a lot. Your grandmother is remarkable. She likes you, that's rare. She's usually suspicious of new people. I like her too. She's been sharing stories about your childhood, something about you trying to build a treehouse that was architecturally impossible." Even through text, she could sense his smile. "She's never going to let me live that down. I was 12 and convinced I could defy the laws of physics. Did you figure out you couldn't?" "The hard way. Spent 2 weeks with a cast on my wrist and had to listen to my father explain why planning matters more than ambition." Ava found herself smiling at the image of a 12-year-old David, all determination and scraped knees. There was something endearing about the idea of him as a boy who dreamed too big and wasn't afraid to fail. Their text conversation continued throughout the afternoon, moving from Eleanor's care to surprisingly personal territory. He asked about her background, her family, her dreams. She found herself sharing more than she'd intended: her grandmother's influence, her struggles in nursing school, her determination to prove herself in a field that often overlooked women who looked like her. "You're not what I expected," he texted around 5 o'clock. "What did you expect? Someone more conventional, less real?" Ava stared at the message, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. There was something in those words, something that suggested he was as affected by their brief meeting as she had been. She was still formulating a response when Eleanor called her name from the bedroom. By the time she'd finished helping with evening medications and preparing to leave, the moment had passed, and she wasn't sure what she would have said anyway. But as she waited for her bus in the gathering dusk, her phone buzzed one more time. "Thank you for taking care of her, and thank you for the conversation. I haven't talked to anyone like that in a long time." Ava clutched the phone, reading the message 3 times before responding, "Anytime." As the bus carried her back toward her small apartment and normal life, she realized that something fundamental had shifted. David Montgomery wasn't just her employer's grandson anymore. He was becoming real to her, human in ways that made her chest tight with longing. And the most dangerous part was that he seemed to be seeing her as real too. Sometimes the most dangerous conversations happen when you're not even in the same room. By Wednesday evening, Ava's phone had become both her greatest comfort and her worst enemy. 3 days of text exchanges with David had created an intimacy she'd never experienced before, the kind that bloomed in the space between question and answer, in the pause before hitting send. She was curled up on her small couch in her Oak Cliff apartment, wearing an oversized sweater and nursing a cup of tea when his latest message arrived. "Tell me something nobody else knows about you." Her fingers hovered over the screen. They'd been texting for hours. What had started as updates about Eleanor's condition had evolved into something deeper, more personal. He'd told her about the pressure of running a family empire he'd never asked to inherit, about missing his grandfather, who taught him to see buildings not as investments, but as homes where people would build their lives. "I sing to myself when I'm nervous," she typed, then immediately wanted to delete it. "Old gospel songs my grandmother taught me. I did it during my licensing exam. Got strange looks from the other test takers." "What did you sing?" "His eye is on the sparrow." Probably not appropriate for a nursing exam, but it calmed my nerves. "Sing something now." Ava's breath caught. "You want me to, in a text? Call me." The 2 words sat on her screen like a dare. They'd been dancing around the edge of something for 3 days, hiding behind the safety of typed words. A phone call would change everything, would make this real in ways that text messages couldn't. Her phone rang before she could lose her nerve. David's name flashed across the screen, and her heart hammered against her ribs as she answered. "Hi." His voice was deeper than she remembered, rougher around the edges like he'd been talking in boardrooms all day. "Hi." She tucked her legs under herself, suddenly aware of how quiet her apartment was, how intimate this felt. "You don't have to sing if you don't want to," he said, and she could hear something like nervousness in his voice. I wanted to hear your voice." The honesty in his admission made her chest tight. "Where are you right now?" "Hotel room in Houston, 23rd floor overlooking the city." "You?" "My couch. Much less impressive view, just the parking lot and Mrs. Calderon's garden." "Tell me about Mrs. Calderon's garden." It was such an unexpected request that Ava laughed. "You really want to know?" "I want to know everything about your world, Ava." The way he said her name with that rough tenderness made her close her eyes and sink deeper into the couch. "She grows tomatoes and marigolds, says the flowers keep the bugs away, but I think she just likes how they look together. Red and orange and yellow all mixed up like a sunset." "That sounds perfect." They talked for 2 hours, about everything and nothing. Her favorite corner of the nursing school library where she used to study, his first disastrous business meeting when he was 26 and thought a good suit could hide his inexperience. She told him about learning to braid hair at her grandmother's kitchen table, listening to stories about the old neighborhood. He told her about the loneliness of success, how every relationship felt transactional, how he'd forgotten what it was like to talk to someone who didn't want anything from him. "What do you want, Ava?" he asked as the conversation wound toward midnight. "Right now or in general?" "Both. Everything." She was quiet for a long moment, listening to the sound of his breathing through the phone. "Right now I want you to come home safely. In general, I want to matter, to make a difference in people's lives, even if it's just one person at a time." "You matter," he said, and his voice was so quiet she almost missed it. "You matter to my grandmother. You matter to me." The confession hung between them, too big for the safety of their careful conversation. Ava felt tears prick at her eyes, not sad tears, but the kind that came when someone saw you exactly as you were and didn't look away. "David, I know this is complicated. I know you're there to work, and I'm supposed to be professional, and there are 1,000 reasons why this is a bad idea. But I can't stop thinking about you. The way you hum to my grandmother, the way you actually listen when people talk, the way you make everyone around you feel like they're worth something. I can't stop thinking about what it would be like to—" He trailed off, and Ava's imagination filled in the silence with dangerous possibilities. "To what?" she whispered. "To know you, really know you. Not just these stolen conversations, but everything. Your morning routine, how you take your coffee, what makes you laugh when you think nobody's watching." Ava's free hand pressed against her chest, trying to contain the wild beating of her heart. "David, I don't have experience with this kind of thing." "What kind of thing?" "Wanting someone I can't have." The silence stretched between them, loaded with everything they weren't saying. "Who says you can't have me?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Reality. Logic, the fact that we live in completely different worlds. Maybe the worlds aren't as different as we think." Before Ava could respond, her phone beeped with another call. Celeste's name flashed on the screen. It was past midnight, which meant either emergency or crisis. "I have to take this," she said reluctantly. "My friend, take it." "But Ava, this conversation isn't over." She switched calls with trembling fingers. "Celeste, what's wrong?" "Girl, I have been calling you for hours. Are you okay? You never ignore my calls." Ava glanced at her phone and realized she had 4 missed calls and 6 text messages. "I was on another call." "What's the emergency?" "The emergency is that my best friend has been MIA all week, and when she finally surfaces, she sounds like she's been hit by a truck." "What's going on?" "Nothing's going on. I told you, I'm just adjusting to the new job." "Uh-huh. And I suppose this has nothing to do with Mystery Man from the mansion?" Ava sank deeper into her couch, suddenly exhausted. "Celeste, it's complicated. It always is when it matters. Talk to me." So she did. She told Celeste about the text messages, the phone call, the way David made her feel like she was the most fascinating person in the world. She talked about Eleanor's stories, about the weight of responsibility she saw in David's eyes, about the impossible situation of falling for someone so far out of her league. "Honey," Celeste said when Ava finally ran out of words, You're not falling. You already fell. The question is what you're going to do about it. There's nothing to do about it. He's a millionaire businessman. I'm a brand new nurse with student loans and a beat-up Honda. This is not a fairy tale. Maybe not. But it's not a tragedy either unless you make it one. When's the last time someone made you feel this way? Never, Ava admitted. I've never felt this way about anyone. Then maybe, just maybe, you owe it to yourself to see where it goes. After they hung up, Ava sat in the dark of her living room staring at her phone. David's contact information glowed on the screen, and she realized she was memorizing it. His number, the way his name looked in her recent calls, the little photo that had appeared somehow showing him laughing at something off camera. Her phone buzzed with a text. I hope everything's okay with your friend. Sleep well, Ava. Dream of marigolds and tomatoes. She smiled, despite everything, typing back, Sweet dreams, David. Come home safe. But as she finally headed to bed, Ava couldn't shake Celeste's words. She had fallen, completely, irrevocably, terrifyingly. And tomorrow, David would be coming home. The thought sent a thrill of anticipation and terror through her chest. 3 days of building intimacy through words and voices, and tomorrow they'd be in the same room again. Tomorrow, she'd have to look into those dark eyes and pretend her heart didn't skip every time he said her name. Tomorrow, everything would change. The heart has no concept of timing. It simply knows what it wants. Ava changed her scrubs 3 times Thursday morning, each choice feeling simultaneously too formal and too casual for a day that would determine the trajectory of her entire life. She finally settled on the deep green set that Celeste had given her for graduation, the one that made her look professional but approachable. You're being ridiculous, she told her reflection as she applied lip gloss for the 2nd time. He's your patient's grandson, that's all. But her hands shook as she braided her hair, and her stomach felt like it was full of restless butterflies. 3 days of intimate conversations had created an expectation, a tension that would either snap or strengthen when they were finally in the same room again. The bus ride to Highland Park felt eternal. Ava checked her phone obsessively, looking for any sign that David's flight had been delayed, that she'd have more time to prepare herself. But there was nothing, just the memory of his voice saying her name in the dark, the weight of all the things they'd shared when geography made honesty feel safe. Helena met her at the door, with an expression somewhere between relief and exhaustion. Oh, thank goodness you're here. Mother barely slept last night, kept asking when David would be home, and he called this morning to say his flight was delayed, so he won't be here until this afternoon. Ava felt an odd mixture of disappointment and reprieve, more time to steady her nerves, but also more time to overthink every possible scenario. How's she doing otherwise? Ava asked, following Helena upstairs. Anxious. You know how she gets when her routine is disrupted. But she perked up when I told her you'd be here all day. I think you're becoming her favorite person. Eleanor was indeed restless, sitting up in bed and fiddling with the edge of her quilt when Ava entered. But her face brightened immediately. There's my angel. I was afraid you might not come today. I'm here every day, Mrs. Montgomery. Why would today be different? Because my grandson is being foolish about some business deal, and Helena's been pacing the floors, and the whole house feels unsettled. Eleanor reached for Ava's hand. But you always make everything calmer. Ava squeezed the elderly woman's fingers gently. Let's focus on having a good day. Just you and me. How are you feeling? Any pain this morning? They fell into their comfortable routine, vital signs, medications, gentle conversation. But Ava found it hard to concentrate. Every sound in the house made her pulse quicken. Every car in the driveway made her heart stop. When the mailman knocked at 11 a.m., she practically jumped out of her skin. You seem nervous, dear, Eleanor observed as Ava helped her with lunch. Everything all right? Of course. Just want to make sure you're comfortable. Eleanor's eyes, still sharp despite her illness, studied Ava's face. It wouldn't have anything to do with David coming home, would it? Heat flooded Ava's cheeks. I don't know what you mean. Oh, child, I may be old and sick, but I'm not blind. I saw how you two looked at each other the other day, and he's been asking about you in every phone call. He's been asking about you, Mrs. Montgomery. He's worried about his grandmother. He asks about me for 30 seconds, then spends 20 minutes asking if you're settling in well, if you need anything, if you seem happy here. Eleanor's smile was knowing. That boy hasn't shown this much interest in another person since, well, maybe ever. Before Ava could form a response, they heard the front door open downstairs, followed by the sound of luggage wheels on marble, and Helena's voice calling out a welcome. David! Eleanor's face lit up like Christmas morning. Heavy footsteps on the stairs, getting closer. Ava's mouth went dry, and she found herself smoothing her scrubs, checking her hair, trying to look like someone who hadn't spent the last 3 days falling in love with a man's voice. When David appeared in the doorway, Ava's breath caught. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes and a tightness around his mouth that spoke of stress and long meetings. But when his gaze found hers, something shifted in his expression, a softening that made her knees feel unsteady. "Nana," he said, moving to Eleanor's bedside and kissing her forehead. "I missed you." "I missed you too, sweetheart, but I've been in excellent hands." Eleanor's eyes twinkled as she gestured toward Ava. "Haven't I, dear?" David straightened and looked directly at Ava for the first time since entering the room. "Hello, Ava." "Hello." Her voice came out softer than she'd intended, almost breathless. The air in the room felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. They stood there, looking at each other, and Ava was certain that Eleanor could feel the electricity crackling between them. "How was Houston?" Eleanor asked, breaking the spell. "Productive, complicated, but successful." David's eyes never left Ava's face. "I'm glad to be home." "Well, I should let you two catch up," Ava said, moving toward her bag. "I'll just organize the evening medications and—" "Don't leave on my account," David said quickly. "Please, stay." The word "please" held a weight that had nothing to do with professional courtesy. Ava felt her resolve wavering, her careful boundaries beginning to blur. "Nonsense," Eleanor said cheerfully. "David, why don't you tell Ava about that restaurant you went to, the one with the view of the river?" As David began describing his business dinners, Ava found herself watching his hands as he gestured, remembering the way his voice had sounded in the dark when he'd told her she mattered. The man in front of her was the same person she'd fallen for over the phone, but seeing him in person added layers of complexity, the way he automatically adjusted Eleanor's pillows, the tired slump of his shoulders that spoke of carrying too much responsibility, the way his eyes kept finding hers as if checking to make sure she was real. "I should check your grandmother's vitals," Ava said when there was a pause in conversation, desperate for something to do with her hands. As she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around Eleanor's arm, David moved closer to watch, close enough that she could smell his cologne, could feel the warmth radiating from his body, close enough that when he spoke, his voice was just for her. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for taking such good care of her, and for the conversations. They got me through some difficult days." Ava's hands trembled slightly as she pumped the cuff. "Just doing my job." Both of them. She looked up at him then, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her forget to breathe. This wasn't the polite gratitude of an employer. This was something deeper, more personal. This was a man who had shared his fears in the dark and was now trying to figure out how to navigate the daylight. "Your blood pressure is perfect, Mrs. Montgomery," Ava announced, her voice steadier than she felt. "Of course it is. I've had the best care." Eleanor looked between them with obvious satisfaction. "David, why don't you walk Ava to her car when she's ready to leave? Make sure she gets out safely." "Nana," David started. "It's the gentlemanly thing to do. Your grandfather would insist." Ava finished her afternoon tasks in a haze of anticipation and dread. Every few minutes David would appear in the doorway to check on Eleanor, but his attention was clearly divided. She felt his gaze on her as she worked, and the weight of it made her hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. Finally, as evening approached, there was no more work to delay her departure. She packed her bag slowly, said goodbye to Eleanor, and found David waiting at the bottom of the stairs. "You don't have to walk me out," she said. "I take the bus." "I know. I looked up the route after you mentioned it." He held the front door open for her. "Come on." They walked across the circular driveway in silence, the setting sun casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured grounds. When they reached the iron gates, David stopped and turned to face her. "Ava, David, we should probably talk about—" "I meant everything I said," he interrupted. "On the phone, in the texts, all of it. I know, but this is complicated. Your family, my job—" "Forget my family, forget your job, just for a minute." He stepped closer, and Ava could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. "What do you want?" The question hung between them, simple and impossible. What did she want? She wanted to stop overthinking, stop cataloging all the reasons this was a terrible idea. She wanted to touch his face, to see if his skin was as warm as she'd imagined. She wanted to know what it felt like to be held by someone who saw her as more than just competent, more than just safe. "I want—" she started, then lost her nerve. "Tell me. I want to stop being afraid of wanting things I can't have." David's smile was soft, understanding. What if you could have them? Before she could answer, the bus appeared at the corner, its diesel engine cutting through the evening quiet. Ava looked toward it, then back at David, torn between safety and possibility. Think about it, he said, backing away from the curb. Just think about it. As the bus carried her home, Ava pressed her forehead against the cool window and tried to make sense of the chaos in her chest. 3 days of words had become reality, and reality was more intense than any conversation could have prepared her for. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Sweet dreams, Ava. Dream of possibilities." She stared at the message until her stop, knowing that when she closed her eyes that night, she'd dream of dark eyes and gentle hands and the weight of a question that could change everything. What if you could have them? The space between wanting something and having it is where courage lives. Friday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for October in Dallas, the kind of weather that made everything feel possible. Ava stood at her bathroom mirror, applying mascara with hands that barely trembled, a marked improvement from the day before. She'd spent most of the night replaying David's question. What if you could have them? The answer scared her, more than the question itself. Her phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. "Girl, you look different. Whatever happened yesterday, it's written all over your face." Ava frowned at the message. "You can't see my face. We're texting. I can see your energy through the phone. You're glowing or something. Spill it." Nothing happened. He came home, we talked briefly, end of story. "Uh-huh. And I'm the Queen of England. Call me later with the real version." As Ava walked to the bus stop, she caught her reflection in store windows and understood what Celeste meant. There was something different about her, a lightness in her step, a brightness in her eyes that hadn't been there a week ago. She looked like a woman on the verge of something extraordinary, and it terrified her. The Montgomery estate felt different too when she arrived. Helena greeted her with unusual excitement. "Oh, Ava, perfect timing. David's decided to work from home today. Something about wanting to spend time with Mother. She's absolutely thrilled." Helena paused, studying Ava's face with the shrewdness of a woman who'd raised 3 children. "You look lovely today, dear. That color suits you." Ava glanced down at her teal scrubs, the ones she'd chosen without thinking, the ones that happened to be her most flattering. "Thank you, Mrs. Montgomery." "Please, call me Helena. We're practically family now." The word family sent an unexpected warmth through Ava's chest, followed immediately by a spike of anxiety. Family implied permanence, belonging, concepts that felt both precious and dangerous when applied to her situation. Upstairs, Eleanor was already awake and unusually animated, propped up against her pillows with her silver hair brushed and pinned back, wearing a soft pink bed jacket that brought color to her cheeks. "There's my angel! Did Helena tell you? David's staying home today. He says he has calls to make, but I think he just wants to be here." Eleanor's eyes twinkled with mischief. With family. There was that word again. Ava busied herself checking Eleanor's overnight vitals, trying to ignore the flutter in her chest. "How did you sleep? Any discomfort?" "Like a baby. Best night I've had in weeks. I think having David home just makes everything feel more settled." Eleanor reached for Ava's hand. "You know, dear, I've been thinking about what you said the other day, about your grandmother, and how she taught you that healing isn't just medicine. What about it? I think she was right. And I think you inherited her gift for making people feel like they matter." Eleanor squeezed her hand gently. "David's been different since you started working here. Lighter, somehow. More like the boy I remember before he became so serious about everything." Before Ava could respond, David appeared in the doorway with a tray containing coffee, toast, and a small vase, holding a single yellow rose from the garden. "Breakfast for the Queen," he announced, and Eleanor clapped her hands in delight. "Oh, you spoil me, but where's Ava's coffee? She's been taking care of me all week. She deserves spoiling too." David's eyes met Ava's, and she saw something playful in their depths. "I wasn't sure how you liked it." "Black?" Ava said, then immediately felt foolish for the way her voice caught on such a simple word. "I'll remember that," he said, and the way he said it made it sound like a promise. As Eleanor enjoyed her breakfast, David lingered in the room, ostensibly checking emails on his phone, but clearly in no hurry to leave. Ava tried to focus on her morning routine, but she was acutely aware of his presence, the way he seemed to fill up the space just by being in it. "David, why don't you show Ava the library while I finish eating?" Eleanor suggested. "She mentioned loving books, and ours has such a beautiful view of the gardens." "Nana, I'm sure Ava has work to do." "Nonsense. The morning medications are done, and I'm perfectly content with my toast. Go on, both of you. I'll call if I need anything. There was no polite way to refuse without seeming rude. Ava found herself following David down the hallway, hyper-aware of the sound of their footsteps on the hardwood floor, the scent of his cologne mixing with the faint aroma of coffee and roses that seemed to permeate the house. The library was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes, comfortable reading chairs positioned near tall windows that overlooked Eleanor's beloved rose garden. Morning light streamed through the glass, casting everything in a warm golden glow. "It's beautiful," Ava breathed, running her fingers along the spine of a first-edition Steinbeck. "My grandfather's collection. He believed that a house without books was like a body without a soul." David moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his arm near hers. "What do you like to read?" "Everything. But I have a weakness for poetry." She pulled a slim volume from the shelf, Langston Hughes, and opened it to a random page. "My grandmother used to say that poets understood the language of the heart better than anyone. Read me something." The request was so unexpected, so intimate, that Ava almost dropped the book. "I couldn't." "Please." His voice was soft, coaxing. "I want to hear your voice when you're not being professional." Ava's hands trembled slightly as she found a poem she'd loved since college. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she began. "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly." The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning that went beyond Hughes's original intent. When Ava looked up, David was watching her with an expression so intense it made her breath catch. "Your grandmother was right," he said, "about poets understanding the language of the heart." They stood there in the golden morning light, surrounded by thousands of stories, and Ava felt like they were writing their own. The careful boundaries she'd maintained all week were crumbling, dissolved by poetry and proximity, and the way David was looking at her like she was something precious. "Ava," he said, stepping closer, "I need you to know—" "David!" Helena's voice called from downstairs. "Phone call from the Singapore office." The spell broke. David closed his eyes, frustration clear on his face. "I have to take this. International deals wait for no one. Of course, I should get back to your grandmother anyway." But as they walked back toward Eleanor's room, David caught her wrist gently, stopping her just outside the doorway. "This conversation isn't finished," he said, his thumb brushing across her pulse point. "Tonight, after Helena goes home, meet me in the kitchen." It wasn't really a request, but it wasn't quite a demand either. It was an invitation to step over the line they'd been dancing around all week, to see what lay on the other side of careful professionalism. "David, just think about it," he said, echoing his words from the night before. Then he was gone, his footsteps disappearing down the stairs toward his waiting phone call. Ava slipped back into Eleanor's room, her wrist still tingling where David had touched her. The elderly woman looked at her with knowing eyes. "He's a good man, you know," Eleanor said quietly. "Complicated, intense, sometimes too serious for his own good, but good. The kind of good that comes from having a heart big enough to carry other people's burdens." "Mrs. Montgomery?" "Eleanor. Call me Eleanor." She patted the edge of her bed, inviting Ava to sit. "I know what you're thinking, that this is impossible, that the differences are too great, that people like us don't end up with people like him." Ava's eyes widened. "People like us?" Eleanor's smile was sad but understanding. "I wasn't always wealthy, dear. I grew up in a one-room apartment above my father's barbershop in East Dallas. Met David's grandfather when I was working as a secretary at his father's construction company. Everyone said it wouldn't work, the secretary and the boss's son. But love doesn't care about bank accounts or zip codes. It only cares about hearts that recognize each other. What happened? 53 years of marriage happened. 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and more happiness than I ever thought possible." Eleanor's eyes grew misty. "But it took courage, Ava. The courage to believe that love is stronger than fear." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine tasks and stolen glances. David appeared periodically to check on Eleanor, and each time Ava felt the weight of their unfinished conversation, the pull of his invitation hanging between them like a bridge she could choose to cross or burn. By afternoon her nerves were stretched thin. Every time she thought about meeting him in the kitchen, her heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and terror. This wasn't just about attraction anymore. It was about choice. The choice to risk everything safe and predictable for the possibility of something extraordinary. As evening approached and Helena prepared to leave, Ava found herself at a crossroads. She could finish her shift, take the bus home and pretend this was just another job with just another family. Or she could stay, meet David in the kitchen, and find out what happened when careful boundaries finally fell away. Eleanor squeezed her hand as she prepared the evening medications. Whatever you decide tonight, dear, make sure it's what your heart wants, not what your fear tells you is safe. The house grew quiet after Helena left. Eleanor settled into sleep, and Ava found herself alone with her thoughts and the weight of a decision that would change everything. In her bag, her phone buzzed with a text. "The choice is yours, Ava, but I hope you choose to trust what's between us." She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Outside Eleanor's window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere downstairs, David was waiting in the kitchen, and with him, all the possibility she'd spent a lifetime afraid to want. It was time to choose courage over fear. Some conversations can only happen in the quiet spaces between day and night. Ava stood outside Eleanor's door for 10 minutes, listening to the elderly woman's steady breathing, making sure she was truly asleep. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she checked her watch, 9:47 p.m. The house had settled into evening quiet, filled only with the soft hum of central air and the distant sound of David's voice as he finished a conference call with his Hong Kong office. She'd changed out of her scrubs into the spare clothes she kept in her bag, dark jeans and a soft cream sweater that Celeste had insisted made her skin glow. Looking at herself in Eleanor's bathroom mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the careful, professional mask she wore during working hours. In its place was someone raw, uncertain, alive with possibility. "Just go downstairs," she told herself. "See what he has to say. You can always leave." But even as she thought it, Ava knew she was lying to herself. She'd already made her choice the moment she'd changed clothes, the moment she'd applied lip gloss with trembling fingers, the moment she'd decided that Eleanor was right. Love required courage, and she was tired of being afraid. The kitchen was softly lit when she arrived, under-cabinet lighting casting a warm glow across granite countertops. David stood with his back to her, sleeves rolled up, tie discarded somewhere, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him since that first day. He was making coffee, real coffee, not the instant kind she was used to, and the rich aroma filled the space like a promise. "You came," he said without turning around, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "I almost didn't. What changed your mind?" Ava moved to lean against the island, putting some distance between them while she found her courage. "Your grandmother told me about how she met your grandfather, about choosing love over fear." David turned then, 2 steaming mugs in his hands, and his smile was soft, understanding. "Nana always was a romantic. She sees love stories everywhere, even where they don't exist. Is that what this is? A story she's creating in her head?" He set the mugs on the counter and moved closer, but not close enough to crowd her, not close enough to make her feel trapped. "What do you think it is?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Ava wrapped her hands around the warm mug, using it as an anchor while she tried to find the words for feelings that seemed too big for language. "I think it's the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me." David's laugh was quiet, self-deprecating. "Join the club. I've been walking around for a week feeling like I'm losing my mind. I can't concentrate in meetings, can't sleep, can't think about anything except the way you hum when you think no one's listening. You notice that? I notice everything about you, Ava. The way you tilt your head when you're really listening. The way your eyes light up when Nana tells one of her stories. The way you make everyone around you feel like they matter." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I've never felt this way about anyone." The admission landed between them like a stone in still water, sending ripples through the careful space they'd maintained. Ava set down her mug with hands that weren't quite steady. "David, I need you to understand something. I'm not like the women you're used to. I don't know how to play games or be sophisticated or—" "Good," he interrupted, stepping closer. "I don't want games. I don't want sophisticated. I want real, and you're the most real person I've ever met. But your family, your business, what people will think about what? About me caring for someone who takes better care of my grandmother than any nurse we've ever hired? About me being drawn to a woman who has more integrity in her little finger than most people I know have in their entire bodies?" His words were fierce, protective, and they wrapped around Ava's heart like a warm blanket. But fear was harder to shake than logic. "I've never done this before," she whispered. "I've never felt like this. Never wanted someone so much it scares me. I don't know how to be anything other than careful." David moved closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Then be careful with me. We don't have to rush anything, don't have to figure it all out tonight. We just have to be honest about what's happening between us. What is happening between us? He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was gentle, reverent, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. "I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. "Have been since the moment you hummed my grandmother to sleep on your first day, and I hope, you might be falling a little bit in love with me too." The words hit Ava like a physical force, stealing her breath and making her knees weak. She'd known somewhere deep in her chest, but hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that terrified and exhilarated her. "I am," she admitted, the words barely above a whisper. "I am falling in love with you, and it's the most beautiful and frightening thing I've ever experienced." David's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. "Then, we're both in trouble." "The best kind of trouble," she agreed, surprising herself with her boldness. They stood there in the soft kitchen light, looking at each other like they were seeing something miraculous, something that couldn't quite be believed. The space between them hummed with possibility, with the weight of confessions that had changed everything. "So, what now?" Ava asked. "Now," David said, his hand still cradling her cheek. "We take it one day at a time. We see where this goes. We learn each other. Your family will adore you. Nana already does, and Helena thinks you walk on water." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and Ava felt herself melting into the touch. "And if anyone has a problem with it, that's their issue, not ours. My job is safe, more than safe. You're the best thing that's happened to this family in years." He paused, his expression growing serious. "But if it makes you uncomfortable, if the lines feel too blurred, we can find another arrangement. Your career, your independence, they matter to me because they matter to you." The consideration in his voice, the way he'd thought through her concerns before she'd even voiced them, made Ava's heart skip. This wasn't a man trying to sweep her off her feet with grand gestures. This was someone who saw her as a whole person, who valued her dreams as much as his own. "I don't want another arrangement," she said. "I want this, whatever this is, wherever it leads. I want to find out what happens when I stop being afraid of wanting something beautiful." David's response was to step closer, to frame her face with both hands, to look at her like she'd just given him the world. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, and the question was so tender, so respectful, that Ava felt tears prick at her eyes. Instead of answering with words, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his, soft and tentative, and full of all the things she didn't have language for. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, like they were learning a new language together, but when Ava sighed against his mouth, when her hands found their way to his chest, David deepened the kiss with a quiet desperation that matched her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, David rested his forehead against hers. "I've been thinking about that for a week," he admitted. "Just a week," Ava teased, surprised by her own boldness. "Okay, fine. Since the moment I walked into Nana's room and saw you. You looked so calm, so competent, and all I could think was that I wanted to know what it would take to make you look at me the way you were looking at her, like I mattered." "You do matter," Ava said, her hands still pressed against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palms. "You matter so much it scares me. Good scared or bad scared? The kind of scared that means something important is happening." They held each other in the quiet kitchen, swaying slightly like they were dancing to music only they could hear. Outside, Dallas hummed with late-night traffic and the distant sound of planes overhead. But inside their small circle of light, the world had narrowed to this moment, this choice, this leap of faith they were taking together. "I should probably go," Ava said eventually, though she made no move to pull away. "Eleanor might need—" "Eleanor is fine," David murmured against her hair. "She has the cool button, and she's sleeping better than she has in months, but you're right, you should go. I don't want you driving tired, and I definitely don't want our first real conversation to end with you falling asleep on the bus." The concern in his voice, the way he'd already started thinking of her safety as his responsibility, made Ava's chest tight with emotion. "Call me when you get home," he asked, as he walked her to the front door. "It's late. Call me anyway. I won't sleep until I know you're safe." As Ava waited for her rideshare, David had insisted on paying for it, despite her protests. She felt like she was floating. The woman who got into that car was different from the one who had nervously changed clothes an hour earlier. She was braver, more alive, full of the kind of hope that came from taking a leap and discovering that someone was there to catch you. Her phone buzzed as the car pulled away from the Montgomery estate. "Thank you for choosing courage, for choosing us. Sweet dreams. Beautiful. Ava pressed the phone to her chest and watched David's house disappear behind the trees, knowing that tomorrow everything would be different. Tomorrow she would return to work as the woman David Montgomery was falling in love with, and he was returning her feelings. Tomorrow, their real story would begin. Love changes everything, even the way morning light feels on your skin. Ava woke up before her alarm, which was unusual enough to make her question whether she'd actually slept at all. But the soft smile that spread across her face as memories of the night before flooded back told her that whatever rest she'd gotten had been deep and dreamless, the kind that came from finally letting go of fear. Her phone showed 3 messages from David, sent at intervals throughout the night as if he'd been as unable to sleep as she'd initially thought she would be. 11:47 p.m. Did I mention you're beautiful when you're being brave? 2:23 a.m. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about the way you said my name when I kissed you. 6:15 a.m. Good morning, sunshine. Coffee's waiting when you get here. Ava pressed the phone to her chest, feeling giddy in a way she hadn't since she was a teenager. This was what all those romance novels had been trying to describe, this fizzy, champagne bubble feeling that made even her tiny apartment seem touched with magic. She chose her scrubs more carefully than usual, settling on the deep blue set that brought out her eyes, and spent extra time on her hair, leaving it down instead of in her usual professional bun. If David was going to see her differently now, she might as well look like the woman he'd fallen in love with, instead of hiding behind clinical efficiency. The bus ride to Highland Park felt like a journey to a foreign country. Everything looked the same. The familiar neighborhoods, the gradual shift from working-class apartments to tree-lined mansions, but Ava felt like she was seeing it all through new eyes. She was no longer just the nurse going to work. She was the woman David Montgomery loved, returning to the place where their story was unfolding. Helena met her at the front door, with an expression that was equal parts knowing and delighted. "Good morning, dear. You look absolutely radiant today. Sleep well?" There was something in Helena's tone that suggested she knew exactly why Ava might be glowing, and the realization made heat creep up Ava's neck. "Very well, thank you. How's Eleanor this morning?" "Bright as a penny and asking for you specifically. She says she has something important to discuss." Helena's smile turned mischievous. "And David's been up since dawn, pacing around the kitchen like a caged lion. I haven't seen him this energetic since, well, ever." The mention of David made Ava's pulse quicken, but before she could respond, Eleanor's voice called from upstairs. "Is that my angel? Bring her up, Helena. We have things to talk about." Eleanor was indeed bright-eyed and animated, propped up against her pillows with her silver hair perfectly styled and wearing a bed jacket that Ava had never seen before, pale yellow silk that made her look almost girlish. "There she is," Eleanor said, patting the edge of the bed in invitation. "Come sit, dear. We need to have a chat." Ava settled beside her, automatically reaching for Eleanor's wrist to check her pulse. But Eleanor caught her hand instead, holding it between both of her own. "How are you feeling this morning, sweetheart?" The question was loaded with meaning, and Eleanor's eyes sparkled with the kind of maternal intuition that saw through any pretense. Ava felt herself blushing despite her best efforts to maintain professional composure. "I'm well, thank you. How did you sleep?" "Like a baby, thanks to you. But that's not what I'm asking, and you know it." Eleanor's smile was gentle but persistent. "David came to see me this morning. Very early he wanted to talk." Ava's stomach fluttered with nervousness. "Oh? He told me that you two have decided to see where your feelings might lead. He was very respectful about it, asked for my blessing, if you can imagine, as if he needed permission to follow his heart." Eleanor squeezed Ava's hand. "I told him what I'm going to tell you, that I couldn't be happier." Relief flooded through Ava so completely that she felt dizzy. "You're not concerned about the complications, my job, the family dynamics? Honey, when you get to be my age, you realize that life is too short to worry about complications. What matters is that two good people have found each other." Eleanor's eyes grew soft with memory. "Besides, I've been watching you together. The way he lights up when you walk into a room, the way you calm down when he's here, that's not something you find every day." "I'm scared," Ava admitted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "I've never felt this way about anyone, never risked this much. What if I'm not enough for his world? What if—" "Stop." Eleanor's voice was firm, but kind. "You listen to me, Ava Robinson. You are enough. More than enough. You're exactly what that boy needs. Someone real, someone who sees his heart instead of his bank account." She paused, studying Ava's face. "But more importantly, He's what you need too. Someone who sees how special you are, who values your strength and your gentleness equally. Before Ava could respond, they heard familiar footsteps on the stairs, and David appeared in the doorway holding a tray with coffee, fresh fruit, and what looked like homemade blueberry muffins. "Morning, Nana." Ava. His voice was carefully neutral, professional, but his eyes when they met hers were warm with everything they'd shared the night before. "David, sweetheart, I was just telling Ava how happy I am about your news." Eleanor's voice was bright with mischief. "No need to pretend around me. I've already given you both my blessing." The careful mask David had been wearing dissolved into a smile that transformed his entire face. "Thank you, Nana. That means everything." He set the tray on Eleanor's bedside table, but his attention was entirely on Ava. "How did you sleep?" "Better than expected." She accepted the coffee he offered, their fingers brushing in a way that sent electricity up her arm. "Thank you for the messages. They were sweet. Just the truth." They gazed at each other for a moment, lost in their own world, until Eleanor's delighted laughter broke the spell. "Oh, you two are absolutely precious. Like teenagers with their first crush." She clapped her hands together. "David, why don't you show Ava the conservatory while I have my breakfast? She might enjoy seeing your grandfather's orchid collection." It was clearly a diplomatic suggestion to give them some privacy, and both David and Ava recognized it for what it was. They exchanged a look that was part gratitude, part nervous anticipation. "Would you like to see the conservatory?" David asked, his voice formal but his eyes dancing. "I'd love to." The conservatory was a glass-walled room at the back of the house, filled with exotic plants and the kind of humid warmth that made everything feel tropical and secret. Orchids of every color imaginable hung from carefully positioned hooks, their blooms creating a tapestry of natural art. "It's incredible," Ava breathed, moving between the plants like she was walking through a dream. "My grandfather started this collection on his honeymoon with Nana. They went to Thailand, and he became obsessed with the idea of bringing some of that beauty home to her." David moved to stand beside a particularly stunning white orchid, its petals edged in deepest purple. He used to say that some things are too beautiful to exist in the wild alone. They need to be tended, protected, given the right environment to flourish. The metaphor wasn't lost on either of them. Ava turned to face him, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her breath catch. "Is that what we're doing? Creating the right environment for something beautiful to flourish?" "I hope so." He stepped closer, and the humid air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. "Ava, about last night, are you having second thoughts?" "God, no. The opposite, actually. I'm having third and fourth and fifth thoughts about how much I want this to work." His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing naturally. "I was awake half the night thinking about everything that could go wrong, all the obstacles we'll have to navigate. But then I remembered the way you felt in my arms, the way you said my name, and none of the obstacles seemed to matter anymore." Ava's heart did a complicated dance in her chest. "What kinds of obstacles?" "The media, for one. My family's been in the Dallas Society pages for 3 generations. They'll want to know who you are, where you came from, whether you're suitable." His voice took on a bitter edge. "There will be gossip, speculation, probably some ugly comments from people who think they know what's best for me." "Maybe they're right," Ava said quietly. "Maybe there are better choices." "Stop." David's free hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "There's no one better for me than you. No one who makes me feel more like myself, more like the man I want to be. If people can't see how extraordinary you are, that's their failing, not yours." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've spent 38 years looking for something I couldn't name, and the moment I met you, I knew what it was. It was this. You. The way you make everything better just by being in it." His words washed over her like warm rain, healing places in her heart she hadn't even known were wounded. This wasn't just infatuation or physical attraction. This was recognition, the deep soul-level knowing that Eleanor had described when she talked about meeting her late husband. "I love you," Ava said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "I know it's too soon. I know we haven't even had a real date, but—" David silenced her with a kiss that tasted like coffee and possibility, gentle but sure, like he was sealing a promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too. Have since that first day, even when I tried to convince myself it was just attraction." His smile was soft, wondering. "We're really doing this, aren't we? Falling in love in a greenhouse full of orchids? It's very romantic novel. I was thinking more like starting something that could last forever." The word forever hung between them, enormous and terrifying and perfect. Ava had spent her whole life being practical, planning for realistic outcomes, protecting herself from disappointment. But standing in David's arms, surrounded by flowers that had been tended with love for decades, forever didn't seem impossible at all. "Forever sounds good," she whispered against his lips. They held each other in the warm, flower-scented air, swaying slightly like they were dancing to music only they could hear. Outside, Dallas bustled with morning traffic and everyday concerns, but inside their glass sanctuary, time seemed suspended, as if the orchids themselves were blessing this new beginning. When they finally returned to Eleanor's room, the elderly woman took one look at their joined hands and radiant faces and smiled like she'd just witnessed a miracle. "Perfect," she said simply. "Just perfect." The problem with fairy tales is that they don't prepare you for Monday mornings. Ava should have known that happiness like theirs couldn't exist in a vacuum forever. For 2 weeks they'd lived in a bubble of stolen moments and growing intimacy, David working from home more often, lingering conversations over Eleanor's bedside, quiet dinners after Helena went home where they talked about everything and nothing until the stars came out. But on Monday morning the bubble burst. She was helping Eleanor with her morning medications when David appeared in the doorway, his expression grim, a folded newspaper in his hand. "Nana, I need to talk to you and Ava. There's something you should both see." Eleanor took one look at her grandson's face and immediately understood this wasn't good news. "What is it, sweetheart?" David unfolded the Dallas Morning News Society section, and Ava felt her stomach drop. There, in grainy black and white, was a photograph of her and David leaving a small Italian restaurant in Deep Ellum where they'd had dinner 3 nights earlier. The caption read, "Montgomery heirs mystery woman. Who is David Montgomery's new companion?" But it was the accompanying article that made Ava's hands shake as she read, "Dallas real estate mogul David Montgomery, 38, was spotted last week dining intimately with an unidentified young woman at Nonna's Kitchen in Deep Ellum. Sources close to the Montgomery family confirm the mystery woman is Ava Robinson, 26, a private nurse currently employed by the family to care for matriarch Eleanor Montgomery. This marks the first serious relationship for the notoriously private Montgomery, whose previous romantic entanglements have been limited to brief liaisons with socialites and business associates. Robinson, who lives in a modest apartment in Oak Cliff and graduated from UT Arlington's nursing program less than a year ago, appears to be a dramatic departure from Montgomery's usual type. The question on everyone's mind, is this a genuine romance? Or has Dallas's most eligible bachelor fallen prey to a calculated social climber? Only time will tell if Cinderella's slipper truly fits. The words hit Ava like physical blows. Social climber, calculated, Cinderella. Each phrase was designed to diminish her, to reduce their love story to a tired cliché about gold-digging women and naive, wealthy men. "How did they—" she started, but her voice failed her. "Someone must have recognized me at the restaurant," David said, his jaw tight with barely controlled anger. "Or maybe they've been watching the house. It doesn't matter how. What matters is how we handle this." Eleanor reached for Ava's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Ignore it, dear. It's garbage written by people who have nothing better to do than tear down other people's happiness." But Ava couldn't ignore it. She could already imagine her co-workers reading this, her former classmates seeing her name in print and drawing their own conclusions. She thought of Celeste, who would be furious on her behalf, and Mrs. Calderon, who would probably field questions from nosy neighbors about her tenant, who was mixed up with rich people. "Maybe we should take a break," Ava said quietly, the words cutting her own heart even as she spoke them. "Until things calm down." "Absolutely not." David's response was immediate and fierce. "I won't let some gossip columnist dictate my life." "But David, they're right about one thing. We are from different worlds. Maybe it's naive to think—" "Stop." He moved to her side, taking her free hand in both of his. "Look at me, Ava. This is exactly what they want. To make you doubt yourself, doubt us. Don't give them that power." Eleanor squeezed Ava's other hand. "He's right, dear. I've been through this dance before, remember? When I married David's grandfather, the papers had a field day, called me a fortune hunter, said I was too common for the Montgomery name. But you know what? We had 53 years of happiness, and all those critics eventually found other scandals to focus on." "This is different," Ava protested. "Social media, the internet, things don't just disappear anymore." "No, but people's attention spans are shorter than ever," David said. "Give it 2 weeks, and they'll be obsessing over someone else's love life." Before anyone could respond, Helena appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with indignation. "Have you seen this nonsense?" She waved her own copy of the newspaper. "I've half a mind to call the editor and give him a piece of my mind." Social climber indeed. As if anyone who spends 5 minutes with Ava couldn't see she's one of the most genuine people in Dallas. Her fierce defense brought tears to Ava's eyes, but it also highlighted the reality of their situation. David's family might accept her, but the rest of Dallas society clearly had other ideas. "There's more," David said reluctantly. "My assistant called this morning. 3 different reporters have requested interviews, and someone from Dallas Life magazine wants to do a profile on our unlikely romance." Ava felt the walls closing in. This wasn't just gossip anymore. It was becoming a story, something that would follow her everywhere she went. Her quiet private life was about to become public property. "I should go," she said, standing abruptly. "Eleanor, you have everything you need for this morning. I'll be back tomorrow." "Ava, wait," David started. "I need some time to think." She was already moving toward her bag, her professional mask sliding back into place like armor. "This is a lot to process." "Don't let them win," Eleanor called out as Ava reached the doorway. "Don't let fear make decisions that your heart will regret." But Ava was already gone, her feet carrying her down the stairs and out the front door before David could catch up. She needed air, needed space, needed to be somewhere where she wasn't David Montgomery's mystery woman, but just Ava Robinson, trying to figure out how her simple life had become so complicated. The bus ride home felt like a journey backward in time, from the manicured lawns of Highland Park to the familiar streets of Oak Cliff, from a world of possibilities to the safety of low expectations. By the time she reached her apartment, Ava had almost convinced herself that taking a step back was the mature, reasonable thing to do. But then she opened her door to find Celeste sitting on her couch, newspaper spread across the coffee table, fire in her eyes. "Girl, we need to talk. If you're here to tell me I should have expected this, I'm here to tell you that you better not be thinking of running." Celeste stood up, hands on her hips in full best friend battle mode. "Because I've been watching you for 2 weeks and I haven't seen you this happy since, maybe ever." "Celeste, you don't understand. They're calling me a social climber, implying that I'm using him." "So? Let them talk. Anyone who knows you knows that's bullshit." Celeste picked up the newspaper and shook it. "You know what I see when I read this? I see a bunch of people who are threatened by a smart, beautiful, accomplished woman who doesn't fit their narrow idea of who deserves love. But what if they're right? What if I'm in over my head? Then you learn to swim in deeper water, but you don't give up the best thing that's ever happened to you because some jealous people want to tear you down." Ava sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "It's not just the gossip, it's everything, the scrutiny, the pressure, the feeling like I have to prove I'm worthy of him every single day. Honey, love isn't about being worthy. It's about finding someone whose weird matches your weird, whose heart speaks the same language as yours." Celeste sat beside her, her voice gentling. "And from what you've told me, that man's heart is definitely speaking your language." As if summoned by their conversation, Ava's phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen, and she stared at it through 3 rings before answering. "Hi, are you okay?" His voice was tight with concern. "You left so quickly. I needed to think." "And what did you decide?" Ava looked at Celeste, who was giving her an encouraging nod, then at the newspaper article with its cruel implications and loaded questions. "I decided that I'm scared," she said honestly. "Scared of the attention, scared of making a mistake, scared of not being enough for your world." "Ava," David's voice was soft, understanding. "Can I come over? I know you need space, but I also think we should talk about this face to face." She looked around her small apartment, the second-hand furniture, the textbooks still stacked on her kitchen table, the life that felt so far removed from orchid conservatories and marble foyers. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because you'll see how different our worlds really are. You'll see where I actually come from, and maybe you'll understand why everyone thinks this is impossible." There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment Ava thought he might agree with her. Then his voice came through, quiet but determined. "Give me your address. I'm coming over, and we're going to talk about this properly." "David, address, Ava. We don't run from problems. We face them together, despite everything, despite the fear and uncertainty clouding her judgment." Those words, "we face them together," sent a warm flutter through her chest. Maybe Celeste was right. Maybe love was worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed impossible. 1247 Bishop Avenue, apartment 3B, she said quietly. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As Ava hung up, Celeste grinned and headed for the door. I'm going to make myself scarce so you two can have a proper talk. But Ava, don't you dare let them win. That man loves you, and you deserve to be loved exactly as you are. Alone in her apartment, Ava looked around with new eyes, seeing it as David would see it for the first time. Small, yes, modest, certainly, but also warm, lived in, real. This was her world, the foundation she'd built for herself through hard work and determination. Maybe it was time to stop apologizing for where she came from and start celebrating where she was going. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone see exactly who you are. Ava spent the 20 minutes before David's arrival in a whirlwind of nervous energy, straightening things that didn't need straightening, wondering if she should put on coffee, then remembering she only had the instant kind. She changed her shirt twice before settling on a soft grey sweater that Celeste had given her for Christmas, something that felt like armor and comfort rolled into one. When the knock came, her heart hammered against her ribs. Through the peephole she could see David standing in the hallway of her modest apartment building, looking devastatingly handsome and completely out of place in his tailored suit. For a moment, she almost didn't open the door. The contrast was too stark, too obvious. Him in his designer everything, her in her discount store furniture world. But then she remembered his words. We face them together. Hi, she said softly as she opened the door. Hi. His smile was gentle, understanding, and when his eyes met hers, all the anxiety she'd been building up seemed to settle. Thank you for letting me come. He stepped inside, and Ava watched nervously as he took in her small living space, the second-hand couch with its hand-sewn throw pillows, the bookshelf made of concrete blocks and boards, the framed photo of her and her grandmother at her nursing school graduation hanging beside a print she'd bought at a local art fair. This is beautiful, he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blink in surprise. It's tiny, and nothing matches, and the kitchen faucet leaks, and Ava, David turned to face her, his expression serious. This is you, your space, your choices, your life that you built with your own hands. Of course it's beautiful. He moved to the bookshelf, running his fingers along the spines of her nursing textbooks, mixed with poetry collections and romance novels. He paused at the photo of her and her grandmother, studying it with the kind of attention that suggested he was memorizing details. Tell me about her, he said softly. That was taken at my graduation. She was so proud, kept telling everyone at the ceremony that her grandbaby was going to be a healer. Ava's voice caught slightly. She died 2 months later. Sometimes I think she was just holding on long enough to see me finish school. David picked up the frame, tracing his thumb along the edge. She looks like you. Same eyes, same smile. She was everything to me. Taught me that home isn't about what you have, it's about who you love and who loves you back. Smart woman. He set the photo down carefully and turned to face her. Ava, we need to talk about this morning, about the article. I know what you're going to say. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. David moved closer but gave her space to retreat if she needed it. You're going to tell me that maybe the reporters are right, that we're too different, that this is all moving too fast. You're going to try to protect me from the complications of dating someone who doesn't come from my world. Ava's silence confirmed he'd read her thoughts perfectly. But here's what you're not considering, he continued. Maybe I don't want to be protected. Maybe I'm tired of living in a bubble where everyone looks the same and thinks the same and wants the same things. Maybe what I need is someone real, someone who challenges me, someone who makes me remember that there's a world outside of board meetings and social obligations. David, let me finish. His voice was gentle but determined. That article this morning, it wasn't about us. It was about their assumptions, their prejudices, their inability to believe that love doesn't follow their rules. They see a successful man and assume he must want a trophy wife. They see a working woman and assume she must be after money. They can't fathom that we might actually just love each other. Ava felt tears prick at her eyes. But what if they never accept me? What if I'm always going to be the nurse or the social climber, or then we'll prove them wrong. Every single day we'll prove them wrong just by being happy together. David stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Ava, I've spent my entire adult life being who other people expected me to be. The responsible son, the successful businessman, the eligible bachelor who dated appropriate women for appropriate amounts of time, before moving on to the next appropriate choice. And I changed that? You obliterated it. You made me remember that I'm not just a Montgomery heir or a business mogul. I'm a man who wants to wake up next to someone who makes him laugh, who wants to build something real with someone who sees him for who he actually is, not what he represents. His words were breaking down every wall she'd tried to build around her heart that morning. But fear was a stubborn thing, and it wasn't ready to surrender completely. What about your family's reputation? Your business relationships? There are people who won't want to work with you if what? If I'm in love with an incredible woman who happens to be a nurse instead of a socialite? David's smile was rueful. Those aren't the kind of people I want to do business with anyway. You say that now, but Ava, look at me. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I would rather lose every business deal, every social connection, every superficial relationship I've ever had than lose you. Do you understand that? But what if I'm not worth it? What if they're right, and I'm just some girl who got in over her head? David's response was to kiss her, soft and desperate and full of everything he couldn't put into words. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. You want to know what I see when I look at you, he whispered. I see a woman who put herself through nursing school while working 2 jobs. I see someone who chose a career based on helping people instead of making money. I see the person my grandmother lights up around, the woman who makes my mother smile for the first time since Dad died. I see my future, Ava, my partner, my best friend, the mother of my children, if we're lucky enough to have them. The mention of children, their children, made Ava's breath catch. It was such a normal thing to imagine, but it felt revolutionary coming from him. A future where their different worlds merged into something new, something theirs. You really want all of that? With me? I want everything with you. The good days and the hard ones, the public scrutiny and the private moments, the fancy dinners and the takeout on your couch. He gestured around her small living room. Speaking of which, do you have any of that instant coffee? Because I could really use some caffeine after the morning I've had. Despite everything, Ava laughed. You want my terrible coffee? I want to sit on your couch and drink terrible coffee and figure out how we're going to handle the reporters and the gossips and anyone else who thinks they have a say in our love story. As Ava made coffee in her tiny kitchen, the real kind because she'd splurged at the grocery store the week before, she could feel David watching her, not judging, not comparing her small space to his mansion, just appreciating, learning her in her natural habitat. Can I ask you something? She said, handing him a mismatched mug. Anything. Are you really okay with this? With dating someone whose biggest luxury is name-brand coffee? David set his mug down and pulled her onto the couch beside him, tucking her against his side like she belonged there. Ava, the biggest luxury in my life isn't the house or the cars or the bank account. It's this, having someone to come home to who's genuinely happy to see me, not because of what I can do for them, but because of who I am when I'm with them. His arms tightened around her. Besides, I happen to know that the woman I love is going to be incredibly successful in her own right. You're already the best nurse at that agency, and someday you're going to run your own practice or teach or revolutionize home health care. I'm not dating your potential, I'm dating you, but I'm also excited to support your dreams however I can. What if people say you're just being my sugar daddy? David's laugh was rich and genuine. Let them. We'll know the truth, that you're perfectly capable of taking care of yourself, and you chose to be with me because you love me, not because you need me. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking coffee and processing the weight of the morning's revelations. Finally, Ava spoke up. So what do we do now? About the article, the reporters, all of it? Now we live our lives. We go to work, we have dinner, we spend time with Nana. We don't hide, but we don't perform either. We just be together. David paused, considering. Although I think we should probably give a statement to the press, something simple, factual, take away their power to speculate. What kind of statement? The truth, that we're 2 adults who met through work, developed feelings and are exploring a relationship, that we value our privacy and hope people will respect that. It sounded so reasonable, so mature, nothing like the dramatic scandal the newspapers wanted to make it. And if they don't respect it, then we deal with it together. But Ava, I need to know, are you with me? Really with me? Because if you are, we can weather anything. But if you're going to let fear make decisions for us, then maybe we should... I'm with you. The words came out stronger than she'd expected, surprising them both. I'm terrified, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm with you. Because you're right. What we have is too good to let other people's opinions destroy it. David's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. Yeah? Yeah. But you should probably know that my best friend is going to want to interrogate you at some point, and Mrs. Calderon is going to ask approximately 1,000,000 questions, and I still can't afford to split dinner bills at fancy restaurants. I can handle Celeste and Mrs. Calderon. As for the dinner thing, David's grin turned mischievous. I happen to make excellent spaghetti. Maybe next time I can cook for you here. The image of David Montgomery in her tiny kitchen, making dinner on her ancient stove, was so incongruous and perfect that Ava started laughing. Real, deep, belly laughter that chased away the last of the morning's shadows. What's so funny? Just this. Us. The fact that the most eligible bachelor in Dallas wants to make me spaghetti in my kitchen with the broken tile backsplash. The most eligible bachelor in Dallas is officially off the market, David said, pulling her closer. He's been claimed by the most extraordinary woman in Texas. Just Texas. Let's start with Texas and work our way up. As evening approached and David prepared to leave, they'd agreed to take things slowly, despite the intensity of their feelings. Ava walked him to the door of her apartment building. The contrast that had worried her so much that morning seemed less important now. Yes, they came from different worlds, but they were creating a new world together, one conversation at a time. Thank you, she said as they stood in the lobby. For what? For not running when things got complicated. For coming here and seeing my life and not finding it lacking. David cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. Ava Robinson, your life isn't lacking anything. It's full of love and purpose and authenticity. It's exactly the life I want to be part of. Their goodbye kiss tasted like promises and possibility, and as Ava watched David's car disappear into the Oak Cliff night, she realized that for the first time since reading that article, she felt hopeful instead of afraid. They had work to do, statements to craft, boundaries to set, a relationship to nurture despite public scrutiny, but they would do it together, and that made all the difference. Love, it turned out, was braver than fear after all. The most beautiful declarations of love aren't always spoken. Sometimes they're whispered in the dark when you think no one else can hear. 3 weeks after the newspaper article, Ava had almost gotten used to the attention. Almost. There were still photographers outside the Montgomery estate some mornings, still gossip blog posts analyzing her clothing choices and speculating about wedding plans that didn't exist yet. But David had been right about one thing. Public attention spans were remarkably short, and already the media was beginning to lose interest in their unlikely romance. What hadn't diminished was the intensity of what was growing between them. If anything, weathering the public scrutiny together had deepened their connection, creating an intimacy born of shared vulnerability and mutual protection. Ava was working late that Wednesday evening, staying to help Eleanor with a particularly difficult day. The elderly woman's condition had been declining slowly but steadily, and her pain medication wasn't providing the relief it once had. Dr. Holloway had been by that afternoon to adjust her treatment plan, but Eleanor remained restless, uncomfortable, unable to settle into the deep sleep she needed. "Sing to me, Angel," Eleanor whispered as Ava helped her into a more comfortable position. "Like you did that first week. It always makes me feel peaceful." So Ava sang, softly humming the old gospel songs her grandmother had taught her, then transitioning into lullabies she remembered from childhood. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it seemed to wrap around Eleanor like a blanket, easing the tension from her face and gradually slowing her breathing. It was past 9 o'clock, when Eleanor finally fell into deep, restful sleep, and Ava was preparing to leave when she heard voices in the hallway. David's voice, urgent and strained, talking to someone on the phone. "No, the Singapore deal can wait until tomorrow. I don't care what time it is there. Family comes first." "Yes, I understand the implications, but my answer is the same." Ava found him pacing in the library, still in his work clothes but with his tie loosened and his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. The stress of the past few weeks, managing business crises while spending as much time as possible at home with Eleanor, was written in the tight lines around his eyes. "Hey," she said softly from the doorway. David looked up, and his entire posture relaxed when he saw her. "Hey, how is she? Sleeping peacefully now? The new medication seems to be helping." He ended his call without ceremony and crossed the room to her, pulling her into his arms like she was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. "Long day?" Ava asked, feeling the tension in his shoulders. "The longest," Crisis in Singapore, problems with the Austin project, and board members who think I'm being distracted by personal matters. His voice turned bitter on the last words. Apparently, some of them have concerns about my judgment since the newspaper article. Ava's stomach clenched. What kind of concerns? The kind that think a man in love can't make sound business decisions. The kind that suggest maybe it's time for new leadership at Montgomery Development. David's arms tightened around her. Complete bullshit, obviously, but politics is politics. David, if my being here is causing problems for you, stop. His voice was fierce. Don't you dare blame yourself for their small-mindedness. The company's had 3 of its most profitable quarters ever since you started working here. If anything, being with you has made me a better businessman because I'm happier, more focused, more motivated to build something that matters. But if the board can go to hell. The vehemence in his voice surprised them both. David rarely lost his composure, rarely let emotion override his careful control. I'm sorry. It's been a frustrating day. Ava reached up to cup his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. What can I do? Just be here. That's all I need. Just you, being here. They stood together in the quiet library, holding each other while the grandfather clock in the corner marked the passing minutes. Outside, Dallas hummed with its usual evening rhythms, but inside their small circle of light, the world had narrowed to just the 2 of them. Ava, David said eventually, his voice soft and uncertain in a way she'd never heard before. There's something I need to tell you. Something in his tone made her pull back to look at his face. What is it? Nana's been asking me about my plans. About us. About whether I'm going to marry you. Ava's breath caught. They'd talked about the future in abstract terms, mentioned children and dreams and growing old together. But marriage was still a word that carried weight they hadn't fully explored. What did you tell her? David's smile was soft, nervous, hopeful. I told her that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I told her that I can't imagine my life without you in it, that you've become the center of everything that matters to me. David, I told her, he continued, his voice growing stronger, that the only thing stopping me from proposing right now is that I want to do it properly. When you're ready, when we're both sure it's the right time, when I can give you the proposal you deserve. Tears sprang to Ava's eyes. And what did she say? She said I was an idiot for waiting. David's laugh was shaky. She said that when you find the person who makes you feel like you're home, you don't waste time worrying about timing or propriety or whether it's been long enough. You just love them with everything you have. She's a wise woman, the wisest. David's hands framed her face, his thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks. Ava, I know it's only been 2 months. I know we haven't talked about timelines or made official plans, but I need you to know that this isn't temporary for me. This isn't some phase I'm going through or some rebellion against my upbringing. This is forever. How can you be so sure? Because you're not just the woman I fell in love with. You're the woman I choose to love every single day. When I wake up, when I'm in boring meetings, when I'm dealing with crisis after crisis, when I'm watching you take care of my grandmother like she's your own family. Every day, I choose you again. Ava felt like her heart might burst from the intensity of emotion flooding through her. This man, this beautiful, complicated, generous man who could have anyone, was choosing her, not just once, in a moment of passion or infatuation, but every day, as a deliberate act of love. I choose you too, she whispered. Every day, every moment, even when it's scary, even when it's complicated, even when the whole world seems to have opinions about us. I choose you. David's kiss was desperate, grateful, full of all the promises they were making to each other in the quiet library. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. There's something else, he said. Something I've been thinking about. Tell me. This house, it's beautiful, but it's not really mine. It's the family estate, full of history and tradition and expectations. He paused, seeming to gather courage. I want us to have our own place. Somewhere that's just ours, where we can build our own traditions and raise our children and grow old together. The casual mention of children again made Ava's pulse quicken. What kind of place? I don't know yet. Something with a garden for you, a library for both of us, space for the family I hope we'll have someday. Maybe not as grand as this, but warm, real, home. That sounds perfect. Yeah? Yeah. Ava smiled through her tears. But David, I need you to know that home isn't about the house for me. It's about who you're with. I could live in a studio apartment or a mansion. As long as you're there, it's home. David's response was another kiss, This one soft and sweet and full of wonder, like he couldn't quite believe his luck. When they finally separated, they were both smiling. "We should probably head upstairs," Ava said reluctantly. "Check on Eleanor one more time before I go home." But as they climbed the stairs together, David caught her hand. "Stay tonight." The request hung between them, loaded with implications they'd been dancing around for weeks. They'd been taking things slowly, mindful of the intensity of their feelings and the complications of their situation. But there was something different in the air tonight, a sense of certainty, of decisions made and futures claimed. "Are you sure?" Ava asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Ava. I want to wake up next to you. I want to fall asleep holding you. I want—" He trailed off, suddenly looking uncertain. "Unless you're not ready. I don't want to pressure you." Ava thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The first day they'd met. The careful progression from professional courtesy to friendship to love. The public scrutiny they'd weathered together. The quiet conversations that had revealed the depths of their compatibility. She thought about Eleanor's words about not wasting time when you found someone who felt like home. "I'm ready," she said simply. "I've been ready since that night in the kitchen when you told me you were falling in love with me." David's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face. "Really? Really? But David, I need you to know. I told you before that I've never been with anyone." "I know. And that's not a problem. It's a gift. The fact that you're choosing to share that with me, to trust me with something so precious." His voice cracked slightly. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." They checked on Eleanor, who was still sleeping peacefully, before making their way to David's room. It was a beautiful space, masculine but warm, with tall windows overlooking the gardens and a fireplace that cast dancing shadows on the walls. "We don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with," David said as he lit the fireplace. "We can just hold each other, just be together." But Ava was done being afraid, done holding back from the life she wanted. She moved to him, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "I love you," she said, "and I trust you. Show me what it means to belong to someone completely." What followed was tender and slow and perfect. Hands that worshipped rather than demanded. Kisses that promised forever. The kind of intimacy that transformed two separate hearts into one shared rhythm. David was patient and gentle, making sure every touch brought pleasure rather than pain. Every moment deepened their connection rather than simply satisfying desire. And when Ava finally gave herself to him completely, when she whispered his name in the darkness and felt him tremble with the force of his love for her, she understood what all the poets had been trying to capture in their verses about souls recognizing their other half. Later, as they lay tangled together in the firelight, Ava traced patterns on David's chest while he played with her hair. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Only that we waited so long," she replied, pressing a kiss to his collarbone. "That was perfect. You're perfect." His arms tightened around her. "I love you so much it actually hurts sometimes, like my chest can't contain it all." "I know exactly what you mean." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other like they were afraid to let go, and for the first time in months, neither of them had trouble sleeping. They were home, not in the physical sense, but in the way that mattered most. They'd found their person, their safe harbor, their forever. And in the morning, when Eleanor found them having coffee together in the kitchen, both glowing with happiness and wearing yesterday's clothes, she simply smiled and said, "It's about time." 2 years later, some mornings Ava still couldn't believe this was her life. She stood at the kitchen window of their new home in Lakewood, watching David chase their golden retriever puppy, Benny, around the backyard, while coffee brewed behind her. The house wasn't a mansion. They'd chosen something warm and welcoming instead, a 1920s bungalow with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves and a garden that was slowly but surely becoming her pride and joy. The engagement ring on her finger caught the morning light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the white cabinets. It wasn't the massive diamond everyone had expected David Montgomery to choose. Instead, it was her grandmother's ring, a simple solitaire that he'd had reset with stones from Eleanor's own engagement ring. 2 generations of love, combined into something entirely new. "Mrs. Robinson Montgomery to be," Celeste called from the living room, where she was arranging flowers from the garden in preparation for today's celebration. "Your coffee's getting cold, and your future husband looks like he's losing the battle with that dog." Ava laughed, pouring 2 mugs and heading outside to rescue David from Benny's enthusiastic attempts to steal his shoelaces. The dog was Eleanor's final gift to them. She'd arranged for the adoption just weeks before she passed, saying that every house needed something young and joyful to balance out all the serious adult conversations. "Need backup?" Ava asked, handing David his coffee. "I think I'm outmatched," he admitted, scooping up the wriggling puppy. "He's got more energy than a toddler on sugar. Good practice for when we have actual toddlers." David's smile was soft, wondering. They'd been talking about children more seriously lately, planning for the family they both wanted. The fertility specialist had assured them there was no rush. Ava was only 28, healthy and strong, but they were both eager to start the next chapter of their life together. "Speaking of which," David said, settling Benny in his arms where the puppy immediately began trying to lick his face, "my mother called this morning. She wanted to make sure we're still planning to announce at the party today. Are we ready for that? Are we ever ready for anything? We just do it together and figure it out as we go." It was such a perfectly David thing to say that Ava stood on her tiptoes to kiss him, tasting coffee and morning sunshine and the promise of everything good to come. Today was Eleanor's memorial celebration, not a funeral, because she'd specifically forbidden anything somber, but a garden party to celebrate a life well lived and love stories that continued beyond one person's time on earth. The backyard was decorated with white roses from Eleanor's own garden, carefully transplanted and tended by Ava's loving hands. "She would have loved this," Ava said, looking around at their small, perfect slice of happiness. "She did love this. She got to see us engaged, got to help plan the wedding, got to hold our hands and tell us exactly what she thought about our decision to elope next month instead of having a big society affair." David's laugh was warm with memory. I can still hear her saying, "Finally, someone with sense in this family." Eleanor had passed peacefully in her sleep 3 months earlier, with both Ava and David holding her hands. Her last words had been, "Take care of each other," and they'd both promised they would. The doorbell chimed, and soon their small house was filled with the people who mattered most: Helena and her husband, David's siblings with their children, Celeste and her new boyfriend, Mrs. Calderon, with a casserole that could feed an army, and Dr. Holloway, who had become more friend than physician over the months of Eleanor's decline. "I have something for you," Helena said privately to Ava, as they arranged food on the dining room table. She pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. "Mother wrote in this every day for the last year of her life. She wanted you to have it." Ava opened the journal with trembling hands, finding Eleanor's familiar handwriting on the first page. "For my angel Ava, who taught an old woman that love stories don't end, they just grow into new chapters. These are my thoughts about love, about family, about the beautiful life you and David are building together. When you have children of your own someday, read this to them and tell them about their great-grandmother Eleanor, who knew a love story when she saw one." Tears blurred Ava's vision as she flipped through pages of Eleanor's observations about their courtship, her hopes for their future, her joy at watching them choose courage over fear again and again. "She was so proud of you," Helena said softly. "Both of you. She used to tell anyone who would listen that you two were proof that real love still existed." As the afternoon wore on, Ava found herself moving through their home like she was floating. This life, their house full of laughter, David's hand always finding hers across rooms, the easy way their friends and family had blended into something that felt like destiny. It was everything she'd been too afraid to want 2 years ago. "Penny for your thoughts," David said, finding her on the back porch as the sun began to set and their guests moved the party inside. "Just thinking about how different everything is now. 2 years ago, I was terrified of wanting too much, of dreaming too big. And now I'm married to my dreams and living in a house built of all the things I was afraid to hope for." David sat beside her on the porch swing he'd installed last spring, pulling her close against his side. "Any regrets?" "Only that Eleanor isn't here to see us get married next month. She'll be there. Every time you wear her ring, every time we tell our children about the wise woman who brought us together, every time we remember that love is braver than fear, she'll be there." As if summoned by their conversation, Benny bounded onto the porch and settled at their feet, tired from a day of being spoiled by visitors. The three of them sat together in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear in the Dallas sky. "David? Promise me something. Anything. When we're old and grey, when we've been married 50 years like Eleanor and your grandfather, promise me we'll still sit together like this and remember how it felt to fall in love." David turned to look at her, his dark eyes serious and tender in the twilight. "Ava Montgomery to be, I promise you that when we're old and grey, I'll still be falling in love with you every single day. Just like I am right now, just like I was the first moment I saw you humming to my grandmother. Even when I'm cranky and my hair is silver and I've forgotten how to be graceful, especially then. Because you'll still be you, the woman who chose nursing because she wanted to heal people, who sings lullabies to anyone who needs comfort, who makes everyone around her feel like they matter. You'll still be the woman who taught me that home isn't a place, it's a person. Ava leaned into his kiss, tasting forever and possibility, and the sweet certainty of choosing right. When they broke apart, she rested her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes, listening to the sounds of their life, friends laughing inside their house, Benny's contented sighs, the evening breeze rustling through the garden they'd planted together. Tomorrow, she would go back to work at the private nursing practice she'd started with 2 other nurses from her graduating class. Next month, they would exchange vows in Eleanor's rose garden with only their closest family and friends as witnesses. Next year, if they were lucky, they might be planning a nursery in the spare room upstairs. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, in David's arms in their home, surrounded by love that had grown from the smallest seed of possibility into something that would outlast them both. Sometimes the best love stories weren't about princes and princesses finding each other across impossible odds. Sometimes they were about 2 real people choosing each other every day, building something beautiful and lasting from courage and kindness and the radical act of believing in forever. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that forever began with humming a lullaby to a sick old woman who knew love when she saw it and wasn't afraid to help it grow. As the stars came out in full glory above their small, perfect house, Ava Montgomery-to-be closed her eyes and smiled, knowing that her grandmother and Eleanor were probably somewhere together, planning the next love story that needed their gentle interference. After all, the best kinds of love were always meant to be shared. What did you learn from Ava and David's journey? Do you believe that love really can conquer fear when 2 hearts decide to build something beautiful together? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.